I wear my poppy for many people. I wear it for friends that are no longer here who I served with, those that not only died in conflict but have, I had a very close friend die of leukemia, I wear it for her. Most importantly, I wear it here for my dad and for his comrades that he served with during World War II. My name's Anne-Marie Jones. I served in the Royal Air Force from November 1984 through to July 2002. I loved being in the RAF. It was just, incredible. I joined when I was 19, so as you can imagine, it really is the world's your oyster. It just was a great time, really exciting. Met and worked with some fabulous people and people who've become lifelong friends, and it is lovely to see, a lot of people have left, some have stayed, but to see how, we just had brilliant time. Highlight for me, I managed to fly in a Harrier. That was pretty amazing. Got away from my desk for a few hours, so yeah, that was absolutely amazing. Best job for me was at RAF Northolt, where I was OC admin for my last tour. Amazing station with such an incredible history. It's that strong connection to World War II and the Spitfire and the Polish squadrons that fought there. I've been incredibly proud to have been part of the RAF and to have served. And that lightning, look at it, it's just incredible, isn't it? They were still in service when I was in. One of them did a fly past when I was at Swindon. We laughed because the pilot phoned our crew room to say he was just about to go and get in the aeroplane, and that was like 15 minutes before our parade started, and that's how quick they got from RAF Bimbrook to RAF Swindon. When I left the RAF, I went and worked for a charity, but it was a history charity, and I was their business manager. So I came to work for the RBL in 2015, and that was after I signed up to do their flagship cycle ride, Pedal to Paris. And by fundraising and getting to meet people locally who supported the RBL, I got to find out about the job as a local community fundraiser. So I started off as the community fundraiser for North Staffordshire in September 2015. Started work for the Legion on the Monday, went and did Pedal to Paris on the Wednesday. But back in March 2020, I became the fundraising manager for the North East and North West Midlands. We look after all the Poppy Appeal organisers and volunteers, corporate relationships. We work on our local Poppy Day in Birmingham, and together with our incredible volunteers, we raise usually around £6 million a year. So it's just the most amazingly rewarding job. So humbling at times, because the public are incredibly generous, and people always want to stop and talk. It's lovely hearing their stories. It's lovely to hear how they feel. The Legion is very much, it's such a British institution. They feel it is very much part of them and something they need to support. So it's lovely to see that. So yeah, incredibly rewarding job. So the poppy, it's iconic, isn't it? It's the symbol of remembrance and hope. John McCrae's poem In Flanders Fields, it is when you think about the wording in that, you can just see how the poppy became adopted as that symbol for us and for remembrance and hope. And now when I do see the poppy, I think, yeah, I'm remembering my dad and the people he served with and the people I served with and friends and family. But I also see it very much as, let's hope for a better future for us all, and the end of conflicts. With the poppy, there's no right way or wrong way to wear it. You see people wearing it in their hats, when they want, or wherever. All we say is wear your poppy with pride, and it doesn't matter what colour poppy. You choose to wear whichever poppy you wish to wear, but wear it with pride. My scarf is all poppies. I've got poppy dress on, poppy scarf, and I actually did bring a poppy with me. This is my very special poppy made for me by one of my organisers. I do like a bit of sparkle, my very special sparkly poppy that I wear every year now. The RBL, obviously we're the main charity that supports the armed forces community, so we're talking about serving people and their families, and veterans as well. So we help in many, many ways. So, we support people to get jobs. We support them if they have, mental health issues, if they have financial issues. We also have care homes. So we have care homes across the UK where ex-service people and their dependents can stay. A lot of our services are there to completely support, those that serve, and we're there for them. We were there for them when they served, we're there for them now, and we'll be there for them in the future. So it isn't just that one-off. The great thing that the Legion do, they will look after someone throughout their lives. When they need us, we'll be there. This year, the Legion's 100 years old. Incredible, isn't it? When you think back, 1921, we had 4 military charities join to form the British Legion, as it was then. It was to provide comradeship and support and financial support for those that had returned, but also for the families of those that had lost loved ones. So that support was so desperately needed in 1921. And really, things haven't changed over the years. We are still here. So 100 years on, we are still here for anyone that needs us. Obviously, this year, we're really looking forward to welcoming all of our collectors and poppy appeal organisers back out into the community. It's been difficult couple of years, as we all know, but we're urging the public and everyone to get out there to get your poppy and to remember every poppy counts. My dad and my stepdad both served. My dad served in the RAF as national serviceman, but my stepdad here, Jim Clifford, he fought in World War II. So he was a conscripted soldier, joined back in June 1944, went out to France in October 1944 after completing his training, and he served in France, Belgium, Holland, and then in Germany. So sadly, he was quite badly injured in the back end of February 1945 when he received a very bad shrapnel wound to his foot. So he was flown back to the UK, and he spent the next 2 years in Guy's Hospital in London. So he was eventually discharged from the army in November 1947. He was supposed to be registered disabled, but never would do that. So he tried to carry on as normal, and I'll say, you never noticed that he actually had this quite bad wound. So, I'm incredibly proud of what he did. He never really spoke about his service until probably the last year of his life. So when he had leukemia, and when he was diagnosed, as terminal, he slowly started talking about his service and what it meant to him. And he said to me, war is a terrible thing. And he spoke about, being 18 years old, and when you woke in the morning, you'd wonder whether that would be the day you would die. And he said, we used to say, I can't die because I've not lived my life yet. And he spoke very much of people that he served with, young people, the older people in his battalion. And in particular, he spoke about their major who was killed, and he and a group of his comrades, they had to bury quite a few of them in the field. And that really affected him. And, he got quite emotional, even at 85 years of age, got very emotional talking about that. And so I promised him that I would go and I would find these people and I would lay poppies and crosses on their graves for him. Because he said he wished he had gone to visit them at some stage, but he said he just felt he could never do it. It just felt too emotional, and he didn't like really thinking about it too much. But he did say, I think of these people every day of my life, I think of them. And it shocked me really, because I just thought, crikey, there I was as a child growing up, and my dad used to be quite quiet, and you'd see him with his thoughts sometimes, but I just thought he was a mild-mannered, quiet man. But clearly, he did have his thoughts, and it was lovely that he did share them with me at the end of the day. So I went off with an former RAF colleague of mine, Flight Sergeant Dot Laird, and Dot and I went off to the Reichswald. Really really humbling place. You see this, you know, this massive cemetery. You've got the RAF crews on one side, the army on the other. I had, with a friend, been able to identify a lot of these people in the battalion that had died in the period that my dad had served. So we identified these 24 graves and where they were. So Dot and I, when we went to the Reichswald, we laid a wreath on the main plinth, and then we went to each grave and put a poppy and cross on it. So it was really, you know, very touching. When I got to the Major's grave, it's clear that family had been there, which was lovely. And one thing my dad did speak about was how the officers and the senior NCOs cared for those younger soldiers that were conscripts. Because as he said, you know, we were just young boys, we weren't men, we were boys. So he just said they were so protective and looked after them. But he said they were really, really hardened, battle hardened by then, these people. And of course, coming to the end of the war, you know, nobody wanted to die, did they? They knew the war was coming to an end. So, you know, the danger they were in was just incredible. So I just, you know, think, thank God he came home. He was a lovely man. And, you know, I'm very proud of his service. When the Veterans Badge came out, so people were applying for Veterans Badge, and I said to my dad, well, I'm getting mine, you need to get one. He was like, oh, I don't know. And so he did. So he applied for his Veterans Badge, and there was a lovely service in Norwich at the town hall, and this is the Lord Lieutenant of Norfolk, give my dad his badge. So yeah, it's a very much treasured photograph for me, because he was in quite ill health then. You can see he's got the walking stick and got his regimental tie on though, which is lovely. It's a lovely photograph. It's very much treasured in our house. I was serving when we had Gulf War I and II, and I knew a lot of people that went out and, you know, were based over in Iraq, and we found ourselves in a completely different scenario. So you think about those guys that are trained to be flying low level, you know, over Europe, were suddenly having to look at doing a lot of training, flying over deserts, featureless kind of, you know, terrain, and it was a completely different ball game for them. So to suddenly find ourselves in this conflict where people were being shot down, where they were dying, and, you know, all sorts of other risks of, you know, nuclear, biological and chemical attacks and things like that, was quite a shock. We always, you know, knew we were training for war, but it wasn't quite this one, you know. And I remember, you know, so many of the aircrew, they were so young. I said people I'd gone through training with, people I'd known, when people started getting killed and shot down, and that was really quite a moment. There was a young pilot who died in the lead up to Op Granby, a young lad called Kieran Duffy. He was on my initial officer training course, and he was one of the youngest operational Tornado aircrew we had. And he died, and I can remember just thinking, crikey, you know, I know that man, I know that name. And, you know, like I mentioned earlier about my dad saying, not lived your life yet. Here's a young lad who's not lived his life yet and had so much to give and was so clearly talented and gone. And, you know, it's so sad. So sad. And so I do, and I do during Remembrance think about those aircrew and those people that lost their lives in, you know, those conflicts throughout the 90s and the 2000s, the more recent ones with Iraq, Afghanistan and so on. I suppose it's not on that kind of scale that we saw in World War I and World War II, but still very much, you know, when you're there and it's part of your life too, it's very touching. It wasn't just those soldiers that were killed, it was those that were injured. Because, you know, there were a lot of people coming back with life-changing injuries that we weren't getting to hear about. And that's why the work of the Legion is just so important now. You know, we're looking after the families of those that lost loved ones, but we are also supporting those and the families of those that came back gravely injured. We often forget, you know, people when they see the Legion, they do think World War II serviceman, the old guy with his medals, and they are just as important, but we sometimes forget about those newer victims of war and their families. So, you know, you think about the span of people we're looking after. We're looking after the 90-year-old that needs a bit of help, right down to that 20-year-old that's been injured you know, in training or whatever, as well as those that have been injured in these more recent conflicts. My son is thinking of joining at the moment. Bit of a toss-up between the RAF and the Army, so I'll do my best to persuade him. No, I think it is such a great opportunity for young people to serve. Obviously a very different, you know, very different armed forces to the 1980s when I joined. Lots of, you know, the job specs have all changed and everything. So yes, so my son, I think he's more leaning towards the Army, but obviously I will support him in any way, you know, he needs that. At the moment, he's thinking of the signals, becoming a signals officer. He's working for an engineering company in Burton-on-Trent, and he was a degree apprentice with JCB. So he's just moved over to a different job. Yeah, so, you know, he has thoughts about armed service. I think because he's got that history, you know, his grandfathers, his father and I served. And I suppose he's kind of, you know, he's thinking about it. So we'll see whether he does, but it is something he is considering, I think. But when I look back, you know, I have those pictures in my hallway and I walk past them every day, and, you know, it's just, I look past, it's such a lovely part of my life, and, you know, I think about how different things had been had I not joined up. I think, if anything, you know, the forces, they enable you to be yourself, they make you into a bit of a character. You were given so many opportunities to do things and to shine, and they bring out the best in you. I think that's what is just incredible about the Royal Air Force and the services in general. They enable you to be the best person you can be. And, you know, I'll always be thankful for the opportunity, and, you know, I'd been given to do that.